Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to this post UFC London show with a little bit less exciting card than back in March, but I was there and it was bananas. Paddy and Molly really blew the roof clean off the gaff. Was the entire highlight of the weekend, other than meeting my man Iron Mike Chandler. But yeah, so I'm joined by Austin Marr and Martin Hamilton, and we're gonna have a little quick recap of this week's card and do a little bit of matchmaking. And with that, I think we're gonna get straight into it.
Hang on, pause. Jamie, you can't leave the viewers with the tease about the Michael Chandler. You got to tell us the story about it.
Oh
What'd
yeah,
you what'd you say to him?
yeah. So Heatherhead had a meet and greet with him, and I killed a can of Stella before going in. Breakfast of Champions, and went in, told him he's one of my favorite fighters. He's super exciting, and they said, come on, man, bring it in for a hug, and we hugged it out and took a few photos, and I told him to take it easy on McGregor, and he said not a chance. So yeah, that was pretty dope. Um, really nice guy. Can't wait to see him. Hopefully we get some fight news between him and Dustin Poirier in the interim before uh McGregor's comeback. So yeah. I think with that, speaking of the lightweight division, Jai Herbert and Kyle Nelson. Uh as I mentioned, I was there live, and damn, every one of those strikes that Jai Herbert threw were like, some of them were like gunshots in the arena. It was pretty crazy. And one of the things about the London crowd is it like the arena was at least half full when the card started, which is a stark contrast to the T-Mobile, which only really fills up for the co-main and the main event. So it was I don't really remember much of it live. I was a little bit of an adrenaline rush, and yeah, what did you guys think of the Jai Herbert's performance?
I thought it was great. Like, I really liked Jai Herbert. I liked him from his kind of Cage Warriors days when he was lightweight champion there, and I felt he's had a really tough run in the UFC. Like, it's very hard when you come in your first two fights of Trinaldo and Moicano. Like I know he was like a champion in what the European's biggest promotion, but like that's kind of been thrown to the wolves. So like having those two losses, yeah, you felt kind of bad for him as well. And then he went on and bet Kama Worthy, which was great. And you thought, right, he's starting to get he's starting to live up to his potential a bit, and he's showing the UFC what he's all about. And then he got two Pereira, and that was a very good fight. Like, it was a fight he was winning for the majority of it as well. I found it quite interesting that they said on the broadcast that he had the fight won in his head, and then Tupalera hit him with that body shot and then the overhand, which finished him. So it was like he took his eye off the prize, and you could see that kind of fed into his performance with Kyle Nelson. Like the first round, he was very tentative, but that's natural. He was like feeling him out. He was getting his range. I think he was looking to see how his chin would react, how his brain would react after that brutal knockout. So I really quite like that he fell out the first round. Maybe like saw the first round off, which isn't it's not always the best strategy, but he grew into the fight a lot, and it was great to see him get that win against Kyle Nelson, and start to kind of hopefully now going forward can put a run of victories together, because he's great, and he's really exciting as well. He's a great stand-up fighter, and I think that makes him more appealable to a lot of the crowd, because everyone loves violence, and when you watch a Jai Herbert fight, you're guaranteed violence. So yeah, it was just really good to see him get that win and start, and hopefully he can go on and put his streak together. What about yourself, Austin? How did you find the fight?
Um, like you said, Martin, I really thought it was a step in the right direction for Jai Herbert. And like you said, he's a very good striker, very good up on the feet. and it's a crowd pleaser. You know, more times than not, it is a crowd pleaser. But yeah, I think he's got a lot of potential, and it's good to see someone with so much potential, you know, finally get a step to the, you know, on the right track, and hopefully he just takes another step from there and he keeps on climbing, you know, because like I said, I think he's got a lot of potential.
Yeah, 100%. I completely agree. I thought he was, you know, piecing Ilya up pretty badly whenever they fought, and it, in my opinion, it kind of exposed Ilya a lot. You know, that he, you know, sometimes he does get clipped, but I think it showed Ilya that maybe 155 is where he should be, because, you know, Jai Herbert's a big lad, and Ilya has a lot of power at 155. I think Uros Medic is a really great next matchup for Jai Herbert. But obviously, you know, with such an emphatic performance, he might, you know, be able to swing a little bit higher in the rankings. Do you guys have anybody that you'd like to see him go up against, or do you guys want to move on?
Medic, that's is that the Serbian boy?
Aye, that's right.
Yeah, that is a great fight. That's a very good fight actually.
Yeah.
Hopefully the UFC are listening to this.
Yeah, here's hoping. Hey, Dana, give me a call. Yeah, no, I had a quick look at the rankings, and they're pretty close, and they're both coming off one or two wins. Um, yeah, moving on to my man Mohammed Mahayev and his purely dominant performance against Charles Johnson. I I was kind of a little shocked that that Mahayev didn't, you know, sink in that RNC at any point. I think he was kind of playing with Charles Johnson a little bit. I think he could have kept it standing a little bit more. He's so fast, and in person, uh, it he looks even faster. It's one thing watching him on the broadcast, but I was like blinking and he was in and out already on some of the exchanges. The suplex was, I could literally feel the vibration of the suplex reverberate around the arena, was just absolutely completely dominant. Kind of a little miffed that he didn't go for the finish, like I predicted, but you know, it's 15 minutes of fantastic experience from Mohamed Mahayev. And I think that moving forward, you know, he's got the best chance out of anybody recently to beat John Jones's record. And yeah, I think Jeff Molina would be a fantastic bout as maybe a featured prelim at UFC 280, which is obviously when Mahayev has requested to fight next.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Jamie. That's one of the fighters that I had down for him. It was Jeff Molina or Manuel Cape or Cape that I had. But just to go back to his fight, like he looked so impressive in that fight, and it's just what I think we need to come to accept with Muhammad, is every fight he's going to look spectacular, and he did. And like Charles Johnson, like he was the LFA like flyweight champion, I'm sure. So he came from real good stock. Like he was a very high level opponent, and Muhammad made him look ordinary. It was quite breathtaking. I know you get a lot of stick for not doing enough damage on top, and like I understand that to a degree, but his positional sense, his top control, like the lot, it was so good. It was such a high level performance.
Absolutely. I cannot underestimate or underemphasize the sheer amount of force that went into that suplex. Like, it rocked me up in the stands. If that isn't effective grappling, man, get Kenny Florian on the phone, because I don't know what is.
it was like he went full Rampage Jackson with that suplex, man. It was amazing. Obviously, we want to see Muhammad Makayev get a finish every time he fights. We always want to see finishes in the UFC, but for Muhammad Makayev, sorry, for him, like that 15 minutes of cage time against a real high level opponent, like he's fought high level opponents his whole career. Like that's the amazing thing about him. Like he was 22-0 as an amateur, spent most of his time in the IMAF, which is essentially the Olympics for MMA, like fighting the highest level amateurs in the world. And then his first professional fight was in Brave. Like this guy, he's fought high level opponents his whole career, and it's making him stronger. And I'm loving the back and forth with him and Jake Hadley online. My only thing is I don't know if I want to see that fight, because I think in my head I know how that fight goes, and I just don't like seeing two up and comers from the same nation put together. Like England's or the UK, it's not massive. We don't have a lot of stars in the UFC, so why do we have to put two of our up and comers up against each other? Like, I know they don't like each other. I know they're beefing online, so it's got that kind of impact like that. But if I was doing it, I'd be trying to keep them apart a wee bit, because, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Makayev, I think he's special. I think he's got a bright future. And like you said, Jamie, if anyone's going to, become the youngest UFC champion in the organization, it could be Makayev. He looked fantastic. I'm not very bummed out that he didn't get a finish. I can understand being there live, you'd want to see a finish, but just think he looked fantastic for 15 minutes. And like you said, Martin, Charles Johnson, he's no scrub. He's a good fighter. Sometimes I feel like these casual viewers, they don't see the number besides their name, and they think, oh, these guys aren't that special. But like, this is a chance, if you get to watch somebody like Makayev, like it's someone special that could potentially do some big things in the sport. But that's about it I've got to say about that fight.
And I think it's that way as well. That's in the UFC, like the caliber of opponent you face in the UFC is so high. Like it's always a world class fighter you'll be up against. A lot of them might not look amazing on the night, but they are, like, believe me, they are world class fighters. But as Jamie says, a lot of the things that happen, like their positional sense, how they strike, how they move in and out, it might not look amazing on TV, but when you see it live, it is spectacular. And yeah, so that comes back to it as well. Like the competition in the UFC is so high, but even outside the top 15, like these guys coming up are mostly champions of other high level organizations, and they're getting in and they're facing each other. So that's how we see a lot of decisions in the UFC, because the caliber is so high. It's very rare you'll get a big mismatch in the UFC, is what I'm saying.
I'm gonna disagree with you on saying that all the fighters in the UFC are pretty world class a little bit later. But before we get to that, my fight of the night, Nathaniel Wood and Charles Rosa. Man, am I right in saying neither of them got a fight of the night bonus?
I can remember.
I think so. I think Nathaniel Wood put something about that online. I think he said there was
that's
a bonus or something.
Absolute fucking robbery. Somebody write both of those men a check and a public apology on Twitter for not giving it to them sooner. This fight might have been one of my favorite fights I've ever seen live. From where I was standing in the stands after the first round, I could literally see individual lumps and swelling on Charles Rosa's leg. I was like thinking back to playing UFC 4, and whatever, you're spamming the leg kick and your opponent just isn't like checking them at all. That's what it looked like, just IRL. I was like so close to predicting a leg kick finish after the first round. It was just absolutely crazy. Such an unbelievable back and forth, and god damn, is Charles Rosa, one tough motherfucker. Pardon my French, but damn, the guy is like made of vibranium. He just absorbs everything. But that said, it was a pretty, I felt it was fairly clear cut for Nathaniel Wood. Uh, what do you guys think?
I agree, and it was great to see Nathaniel Wood back because I believe it was 2 years. It was like 2 years since his last fight, and I think his last two fights had fell through. Like he'd went through the fight camps, and like opponents were pulling out and stuff. So a big part of it wasn't really his fault. It was just how the luck of the draw goes sometimes. I remember the last UFC London, I think two of his opponents had pulled out. He was really struggling to get a fight on that, and like that can pay dividends to a fighter's mentality going through these fight camps, not getting the fight. It can really take an impact mentally. So it was great to see. It was great to see Nathaniel Wood back because when Nathaniel Wood was coming up, he looked amazing, and it was nice. I really enjoyed seeing him at featherweight as well because he looked big for bantamweight, and it was only so long you can keep up those nasty weight cuts. So he looked in his more natural weight class because when you seen him against Charles Rosa, it didn't look like a bantamweight against a featherweight. It looked like two natural featherweights, and I completely agree with what you're saying, Jamie. Charles Rosa must be one of the toughest fuckers to ever live. Like, do you know what I mean? In the most loving way possible, because I don't think he's still walking today. Like, he's probably still not able to walk to the day. Like, the amount of leg punishment he absorbed, he must have raided the farm foods frozen aisle to get peas enough to help with that swelling, because I'll tell you what, that is going to hurt. And it was just such a good fight for Nathaniel Wood, and I think like Nathaniel Wood would have loved to have got the finish, but he loved the 15-minute cage time more. He loved getting the feel back, getting the groove. And I think it brings in that whole kind of question, like, is ring rust real? I think for some fighters, yes, and for some fighters, no. I think ring rust is probably more mentality, because as long as you're sparring, as long as you're still training, I think you'll get a good range, a good idea of timing, you'll get a good idea of range and stuff like that. The anxiety will probably be the biggest factor. Getting caught in the headlights, stuff like that. So I think it comes down more mentally than like a physical thing, ring rust. And Nathaniel Wood just showed how zoned in he was on the night, and really got a great performance against a real tough guy. And it was amazing.
Yeah, I think Wood looked awesome. I mean, I was very pleased, especially with the long layoff, like you mentioned, Martin. To come back and look that good. But you got to give your hat off to Charles Rosa. I mean, that kid is tough, and it instantly reminded me of Eric Anders versus Khalil Roundtree. If y'all remember how bruised up Eric Anders, like I haven't seen anything from Rosa, but I would imagine that's what his legs feeling and definitely maybe looking like. But yeah, just Nathaniel Wood he looked spectacular, and to touch on the ring rust whole thing, I completely agree. I used to think 3 or 4 years ago, because when Cruz was really talking about how ring rust isn't a thing for fighters, and now I've just given up on it, and I'm to the point where it's in your head. Like it doesn't matter. It's all depends on the fighter in question, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the fighters that we talk about the most with ring rust is Connor, and I don't know if you guys saw his birthday celebrations, but the guy's walking around with an old fashioned in one hand, a giant fucking joint in the other. But that's besides the point. How does Chase Hooper and Nathaniel Wood sound next?
I think Wood cleans his clock, though.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was trying to think of a nice way to say it. I really like Chase Hooper as well too, so I wouldn't wish that on him right now. I wouldn't wish Nathaniel Wood on him because Nathaniel Wood is a motherfucker.
Yeah, especially his confidence is going to be so high after that fight.
Yeah, I agree. I think stylistically it's really, really interesting because I think if anybody's going to be able to take and hold Nathaniel Wood down in that kind of area of the division, it's gonna be Chase Hooper. And the guy's jiu-jitsu is just so slick that, I think that it's an interesting fight, if not maybe the most competitive off the
I'd
bat.
definitely watch.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead.
Nathaniel Wood, he's out. He's fighting out of Great Britain top team, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
They are producing some real good fighters now. Like I know they've recently just got their new gym down in London, but the fighters, sorry, this is off me a bit of a tangent, but the fighters they're producing right now is absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
Wow.
100%. I think they had a clean sweep actually at Cage Warriors, with the exception of
My boy Reese McEwen got it done. Come on.
I was there actually for Cage Warriors as well, and I was screaming for Reese McEwen. His family were sitting a couple of seats away from me, so I was pretty into it. I was pretty happy for him. But yeah, on to the next one. My guy from the preview show, Mason Jones, just fucking choked. One of my favorite fighters to watch up until Saturday night, and man, he threw the flying triangle at the end in the third round and got his face bit clean off him for the next 3 minutes, and it was some of the toughest watching I've ever done. I don't really want to say much more about it. If I'm being honest, it's a little hard to talk about. I did get a nice pop from the crowd when I questioned where all the Welshmen were, and suggested that they were off with their sheep. But yeah, what did you think of it, Martin? Was I overhyping Mason Jones, or did he just perform badly?
I thought Klein looked fantastic on the night. Like with Mason Jones, like we know how good Mason Jones is. He's got very good striking. He's a black belt in judo, I believe. He might also be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt, so he's got really good grappling. I think Klein was just a step ahead of him in every aspect. I don't think he really expected Klein to be so good, to be so strong. I think the strength might have caught him by surprise a little bit as well. Klein was coming out of Slovakia as well. Like we've never really seen many Slovakians and at the high level of martial arts, so you didn't really know what to expect because you don't really have a rapport of his gym, his teammates to see. Like, so there's usually a trend when you see guys for certain gyms or guys for certain parts of the world. You can kind of get some good data analysis on them, but we don't really see much for Slovakia out in the UFC. So he came out fairly unknown, and it was a huge win for him. Like Mason Jones was a 2-division champion, and Cage Warriors, the only other person to do that was the notorious Conor McGregor, funnily enough. So it shows the level that Mason Jones is at. I just think on the day Klein was just a couple of steps ahead of him. But like Mason Jones, this shouldn't. I hope this doesn't define where he goes in the UFC, because the UFC can be very cutthroat at times. But I think he's still got a lot to develop. He's still got a couple of steps left to go. He's not the finished article. I think he's doing well being at Team Alpha Male. I think that's a good gym for him. Maybe if he wants to look around other gyms as well, that might benefit him, getting different looks in sparring, stuff like that, because he is a really talented kid. It was just that fight on the night, it just wasn't to be. I think, especially when they were clinching against the cage, Klein looked a step ahead. He looked like he had the advantage in the power. I think with Mason Jones as well, he was really struggling to get that judo throw. But that is it's very hard to pull that off in MMA. The only person that really done it well was Ronda, to be honest, and she was just a fucking savage. So yeah, there was just a couple of things, and then when he went for that flying armbar, that was just out of desperation. But that's one of the moves that when you see it, it can go one or two ways. But you're either an absolute hero and you're viral across the world like Paddy Pimblett was when he done it, or you end up getting your face melted in by an angry Eastern European, which happened to Mason. So it can go one or two ways. What about yourself, Austin?
Yeah, I thought Ludovic looked really good. I picked Ludovic Klein. I'm not a super believer in Mason Jones yet. And I think some of those questions, reared its ugly head in a way. But, the reason I went with Klein is just because I thought that, there was a lot of questions about Klein's takedown defense capability at stopping Jones from getting to the ground, I think. And I thought those were a little over exaggerated. And I thought Klein would do well to keep it on the feet. And I thought he had the advantage over Jones on the feet. And it proved, more or less be true. But I'm not going to write off Jones yet. He's a young kid. He's got plenty of time to take the steps in the right direction and fix some of his problems. But just a good win for Klein.
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't like completely off on that read. But I think this next one I probably was. Unfortunately, the Bear Jew himself got fucked up pretty bad by Volkan Ozdemir, which, obviously this was a pretty tough fight for Paul Craig. I swear I thought he had the that heel hook at the beginning. Thought he might have been transitioning for a knee bar, which would have been super impressive, but I was in shambles. Whenever they read out the scorecards, I thought 30-27 was a little bit stingy towards Paul Craig. I thought he took the first round. His striking seems to have improved significantly since March and even since his prior fights as well. I thought he was doing a lot better in the stand-up than a lot of people were giving him credit for, but it seemed like he just, gassed out pretty badly towards the end of the fight. The good old pulling guard and pulling Ozdemir down into mount in the second or third round. I was like, dude, come on. This is basic stuff. You can't be doing this. But yeah, the Paul Craig fails to get it done, unfortunately. He said tap, nap, or snap before the fight, and man, I wish I had taken a nap because it was pretty brutal to watch him get beat like that in person. Martin, I imagine you're probably hurting a little bit.
Yeah, it was quite sad. It was quite a sad result. Because obviously, I'm a big Paul Craig fan. I really enjoy watching Paul Craig. I think he's very fun for the sport, but he's also from a kind of personal point of view, like he's doing something that no Scottish athlete has really ever done in the UFC, especially Scottish male athletes. Like we've got Joanna Calderwood, who done amazing things as well. But you really felt with Paul Craig, he was a real chance of getting a Scottish champion, and I'm not like that. Like that could still happen. I think with this fight as well, that usually when Paul gets someone into guard, when he pulls guard, the person on top feels that they can do well in that position. So a lot of the time they feel as if it's not like ego, but it is ego. Like when they're in the top position of Paul Craig, they feel safe because top position is usually a place where you're safe and you can land big shots, you can land the ground and pound, and that's where you get yourself into trouble with Paul Craig. Whereas with Volkan Ozdemir, he wanted none of that when he was on the floor. He was willing to he was looking to get up every time. He wasn't letting that ego go. He wasn't getting pulled into the game that Paul Craig was trying to play. He looked really strong. He had a really good base. Volkan Ozdemir, I was actually very impressed with his performance. It was very interesting to hear that he's moved full time over to Superstars or All Stars, sorry, in Sweden. So he's been working with Kazmat Chimaev for this fight, Alexander Gustafsson. They've got a real host of really good wrestlers over there, and it paid dividends for Volkan Ozdemir getting into this fight. But I think, see, when you're fighting the guys at the highest level of the UFC, it can go either way. Like, do you know what I mean? It is a coin toss, and these guys are the highest levels. But I kind of had a bad feeling getting into this fight, and I don't want to say something that's out of turn here, but when you see a fighter getting into a fight without a coach, you really worry about it. And that was the thing. Paul Craig's left his gym up in Coatbridge. He's not really had a gym to train at, for what I gather. He's been training at a Thai boxing gym in Coatbridge, and he's been training in his teammate Chris Bungard's basement, because he's got a cage and stuff set up in his house. So Chris Bungard was actually in his corner, but you were just seeing that and you're going, is that enough when you're fighting at the highest level? And I'm not to tell MD what to do in training and how their preparation should be, but you just expect a bit more. You expect a head coach. I know he was working with Andrew Fisher down south, and there was rumours of him going down there full time. But Andrew Fisher, he runs Team Fish Tank, which is Tom Aspinall trains there regular. They've got Mick Parkin in the UFC, who's on the Contender Series, and they've got Phil DeFries, who was in the UFC and is the KSW heavyweight champion. He's down there quite regular, so he's getting good rounds. He's still working with his teammates like Chris Bungard, Ross Cooper, etc. Like the guys he was working with before. They're all still kind of rallying around him, but the preparations did look out of place. It did look like a guy who hadn't been training full time at a gym under a head coach, and that was my worry going into the fight.
Yeah, I thought so too. You know, especially when news of the coach falling out and everything, it made me really worry for Paul Craig. And he's kind of one of my favorite fighters, just because his style. It's so it's not really, you can't call it unique because the sport originated in ways like his style, but it's like kind of like a breath of fresh air. It's different, but I thought his striking did look good in some parts of the fight. And I thought I think he tagged Volkan a couple solid times. And I'm with you, Jamie. I thought Paul at least won. I think it was the first or second round. I can't remember exactly which one, but I thought he got one off of Volkan. But, you know, again, like you said, Martin, with Volkan, I think he just wanted no part of the ground game, and he was smart about it. You know, he knew what Paul Craig's bread and butter was, and, you know, he was like, no, I'm not playing your game. And I think Paul Craig has gotten to the point now where people know where his strength is, and he's not going to be able to catch guys as easy as he once did. Unless it's someone young and very hungry and looking to make a statement like he did with Jamal Hill. You know, I think if Hill and Craig ran it back, you know, a couple weeks from now, I think Hill would take it just because of that fact. Unless Craig really upgraded his striking game, and he's got to really fine tune the takedown attempts, because I think it's gotten to the point now he can't just rely on pulling guard all the time. It's not going to work. You know, he's going to have to try to figure out other ways to either scramble and take someone's back and chain together some things in the wrestling. But a good win for Volkan. He needed it too as well, just to get right back on the track. But yep, that's about it.
Yeah, so I'm thinking maybe Jimmy Crute next for Paul Craig, but you know, as you guys have said about his lack of a gym, I think he should concentrate more on finding a permanent gym than finding his next opponent. But yeah, with that, moving on to the meatball herself, Molly fucking McCann, man. I've been to some pretty impressive atmospheres, you know, Notre Dame games, Green Day concerts. Oh my God. Molly McCann threw that spinning elbow, and you'd think somebody had set off dynamite the entire way around the O2 Arena. The whole place exploded. Um, she's absolutely fire on the mic. She has, two of like six spinning elbows in the UFC now, knockouts in the UFC. Whenever I went to the bathroom after her fight, they were still chanting "fuck the Tories" and smoking cigs inside. How in blazes the fire alarm didn't go off, I don't know, but oh my God. Hannah Goldie had absolutely nothing for her other than basically just using her massive shoulders to hold her against the cage. And Molly showed that, she's able to get out of that grappling. And yeah, Molly has been, she was on the mic on Saturday night, and she's been on Twitter and stuff today, calling for either Antonina Shevchenko or Miranda Maverick, which, I'd rather see her going up against Antonina. I think she's a much more winnable fight for Molly. But obviously Antonina has one of the longest reaches in the division, while Molly has the second shortest after Hannah Goldie. But honestly, I think Hannah Goldie has shown that she isn't really UFC caliber, and I think the best thing that she could do is get caught and go get some more experience in Invicta or anywhere but the UFC, because she's not going to improve as a mixed martial artist when she's getting put up against people like Molly.
It was a very interesting fight. I thought she was going to do it again with that when she landed that spinning elbow. It was actually really well placed. Hannah Goldie looked like she was maybe out on her feet when that landed. She just followed up with great strikes, and I'm loving it with Molly McCann. Like, I loved her post fight press conference, our post fight interview. It seemed really natural. It didn't seem like an act. I liked the whole bit she was saying about Everton Football Club. She's got a bit of charisma. I don't know if any of you have seen her documentary. Like, her documentary was spectacular. It really helps. It was one BT Sport done. It really helped zone in on the person, and I think she was really close to being cut by the UFC. From what I gathered, I think it was before when she fought Kim. I think she was quite close because she was on a two-fight. She was on a two-fight loss getting into that, and I think if she'd lost that, she would have been cut for the UFC. And then she went on, had two amazing knockouts in London. So I think the sky's the limit for Molly McCann at the moment. She's got that real star power. She's got that pull with the fans. How a Molly McCann fight looks at the moment outside of the UK is a different prospect. Are the American viewers buying into it as much as the UK viewers? It's still there to be seen. But I seen that she was going back and forward with Miranda Maverick, and that was cool. But it seems only one person really benefits for that, and that's Miranda Maverick from that fight. I'm not saying she goes out and smokes Molly McCann, but if Molly McCann beats Miranda Maverick, she's still where she is. She's no anywhere forward in the rankings. So that's what I was saying. I think with her star power, she should be aiming higher right now. She should be looking at a Tracy Cortez or an Erin Blanchfield, like people that are ranked. Like, use your power, use your star power. Like, let's go, use it.
Keep Molly away from Erin Blanchfield for at least 2 or 3 more fights. That's insanity. Honestly, I don't think she should fight Miranda next either, given Miranda's wrestling pedigree. But keep her the fuck away from Erin Blanchfield. I still think they should run it back, to be honest. Blanchfield.
I like the idea of Molly against my fellow Scot, Casey O'Neill. But Casey O'Neill, she's a lot of damage. She's tore a ligament in her knee, so I don't know when she'd be back. But that'd be a very interesting fight because Casey's a dog as well. Casey's ranked. I think Casey beats her. But that's
She's
a
a
little bit.
Rangers fan too, though.
Yeah, look, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. We've all got our flaws, but I think if Casey's, that's the only thing is Casey's rehab and how that would fit in. Because I think they're looking to book Molly on Madison Square Garden, or they'll look round about that time.
I've been arguing with people on Twitter about this today. Paddy has said that he does not want to fight Madison Square Garden, and they've both said that their main priority is staying on a card together. Paddy doesn't want to fight Madison Square Garden because he doesn't want to have to pay taxes to the city of New York, the state of New York, and the federal U.S. government. I absolutely do not blame him. And then as well as that, he'd probably get taxed when he brings it back home as well, which is, fucking ridiculous. That's my little rant. Austin, do you have anything to add? I think we've covered most of.
Yeah, y'all took most of the cake there, but no, you're speaking about Miranda Maverick, and I agree. That her wrestling pedigree is what would be the threat to Molly, but that's why I would say on the flip side, I'd rather see her face Miranda because what is Molly on a 2 or 3 fight win streak now?
2. 3. Two knockouts and a decision victory.
Yeah,
with Kim.
That's right.
So it's it's time for her to answer some of those lingering questions to see if she has improved in all the other areas. Because I think wasn't her first fight in UFC and against Jillian Robinson, she was submitted, if I remember correctly. So she needs to answer some of the ground game questions. And if she loses, no big deal. She's still going to be a star because she's still electric on the mic. Her and Patty, they're great. They're fun to see anytime they're together. So, but even if it's not Miranda Maverick, if there's someone like Antoinina, that's another good fight. And I think I agree with you, Jamie. It is a winnable fight. But yeah, I mean that's about all I've got. Besides, yeah, Hannah Goldie, I don't think belongs right now. Molly really just tore her apart. She got anything she wanted.
Yeah. Speaking of getting torn apart. Alex Gustafsson, man, this was one of my most, anticipated fights on the card, whether Gustafsson still has it or not. And I haven't actually seen DC's exact tweet, but I heard somebody talking about it that if DC is saying you should retire, it might be time to put the gloves down and pick up a Popeyes. Gustafsson just didn't look like Gustafsson in that fight. It only lasted a minute and he was, out on his feet for probably more than half of it. I don't think he landed a single actually damaging strike against Krylov, who on the other hand looked like a bat out of hell. He didn't even walk, he chased down Alex Gustafsson, and some of those shots that were landing, man, were just echoing around the arena. I could not believe how fast it ended. I think Krylov and Ozdemir is actually a great fight to make next. I think stylistically they're both very similar and they've got very similar, defenses as well. So yeah, that's about all I really want to say about this fight. I'm still a little heartbroken for Alex.
I was actually quite pissed off at them making this fight, to be honest. I don't understand why they made it. I think it was a bit of a ludicrous fight to make for a guy that's gave so much to the sport and helped build the sport to where it is, especially in Europe. But what did they think was going to happen? Like, Alexander Gustafsson's not won a fight since 2017. I know he's only fought a couple of times since then, but he couldn't even make 205 last year. Like, he was supposed to fight Paul Craig and was asking to take the fight at heavyweight and stuff like that because he couldn't make the weight, and now he's fighting Krylov as an absolute fucking monster. Like, what did they actually think was going to happen? It was like alarm. Like, I love Gustafsson, but his last few fights have been absolutely hoaching. Like that means disgusting to our viewers out there. Like his last few fights have been really poor. Like, and I was a big Alexander Gustafsson fan. I loved watching him, but he's retired about 4 times since his last win, and you're just like. It's sad. Like there's many other fights they could have. If they wanted to have Alex, if they wanted me to fight out his contract, they could have gave him better fights. He couldn't make 205 a couple of months like last year, but now they're putting him in Mikhailov. I think like fair play with Paul Craig. The striking's not there as much. So you're not so worried about the cumulative damage that he would gain. It would be more how he would cope with the grappling. But Alex Gustafsson's a great wrestler, so that's been actually quite interesting. On the ground, but like I said, I was actually I don't even really want to talk about the fight. I was quite pissed off at the media, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, just to piggyback off y'all's thoughts, I was heartbroken. Gustafsson was one of my favorites growing up as a teenager. You know, it's just the performances he put on against Glover, and then the fight. You know, I should backtrack a little bit, but the fight with John Jones was amazing. And, you know, my first viewing of it, it may have changed now, but my first viewing, I thought Gustafsson had beaten Jones. It was just a fantastic performance. And like you said, Martin, he did so much for the sport, really helped it become more popular over in the European countries. And yeah, it was a tough fight. I picked him just because I was thinking he's looking motivated. You know, he's in there with killers like Hamaev, and it just didn't work out for him. And I think, you know, as a Gustafsson fan, I would beg him to retire. You know, it's just he's just hurting his legacy at this point, and nobody wants that. We all want the memories of, you know, prime Gustafsson, and it's there's no shame in it. You know, you do this for so long, your chin's going to go eventually. You know, it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, 100%. And, you know, Gustafsson's been in there with the best of the best. Some of the performances he's put on have been, you know, world class. Sometimes I watch that first John Jones fight back and have him up 4-1 by the end. You know, it's I completely agree, Austin. As a huge Gustafsson fan, I'm on my knees begging him to retire. Just hang it up, be a coach for Hamzat, and, you know, be a sparring partner and stay in the sport, but just please don't fight again unless it's Paul Craig, which I think
a winnable fight.
I think it's a winnable fight for both of them, and I think after what happened on Saturday night, it's if put a gun to my head, it's the fight that I'm making for Gustafsson. But on to the people's main event, Paddy the Baddy, you fucking lizards. Man, I don't have the words still 2 days later to express just how absolutely batshit fucking nuts that crowd reaction was. I don't think they stopped chanting his name from the lights dimmed for his walkout until they started playing You'll Never Walk Alone. The entire O2 arena was behind Paddy. I didn't even get to see him teabagging Jordan Levitt because I was in such a state of euphoria. I was bouncing around the stands. There was beer being thrown 100 feet up in the air. It was making like a beer rainbow with the lights and shit. It was bananas. I think, you know, Paddy came out very strong at the start. Looked like he had Jordan Levitt rocked a couple times. I believe that's the only time Jordan Levitt's actually been finished in the UFC. I think Paddy, like a lot of Jordan's other opponents, was kind of shocked at how strong Levitt was. But, you know, once Paddy wrapped up that body triangle, you know, Levitt's right hand deep in that triangle, and, you know, you get Paddy on your back, and it's all over, man.
Do you want to take this fight first, Austin, since I've jumped in at every other one?
Yeah, you're good. It went about the way I expected. I thought Paddy would win by decision. I just thought Jordan Levitt would be too tough. So, he really surprised me there. But yeah, Paddy, he looked great, and it got a little dicey there in the first round, for him. And but kudos to him, he survived. He never got in really any big danger with Jordan Levitt. Trying to remember here, I think Jordan has never been finished, so that's a good feather in his cap. I may be wrong on that; don't quote me on it. But I don't think he's ever been finished in his career. But Paddy looked spectacular. His post fight speech was amazing. I'm a fan. I like him. I like what he stands for. He's a showman, but he's a little brash, a little arrogant in ways. But he's a good kid, I think, and I'm very excited to see who he fights next. I think it's time for him to really take that next step because I myself don't see him being a top 5 guy in that division, but I want to see him against top 15 guys for sure.
No, absolutely. I completely agree. I completely agree with a lot of the things you were saying there, Austin. And I think you're right. It was the first time that Jordan Levitt had ever been finished, and it's quite interesting because when you look at Jordan Levitt, he's very goofy. He's very flamboyant. He's almost like the opposite of what you would kind of paint a cage fighter to be, but he's really good. He's really strong. He was really good in the transitions. He was looking to kind of have Paddy against the cage, but it was really. I don't want to put a dampener on what we're saying here because it is all positive. But getting into the fight, listening to the commentary at home, they were painting this as a striker versus grappler match. And you were just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Most of Paddy Pimblett's career, he was known as a grappler. He wasn't known as this elusive striker until he got a couple of finishes in the UFC. And we've never really seen him dominated in the ground apart from, I think the only guy to do it to him was Sonnen Bach. Is it Norwegian? The guy who comes out with the Viking shield and stuff. He fought in Bellator a few times. He's got quite that Bilal Muhammad style, where he's on top, doesn't really do a lot of damage, but he smothers you a bit like a wet blanket. But he's really carry like Soren Blanc. He is so cool. That's the only time we've ever really seen Paddy dominated on the ground. So I felt like getting into this fight, you felt Paddy could have took it anywhere he wanted. I felt he had the better. He would have had the more submissions in his arsenal because we've seen his I think the majority of his wins have been via submission. His grappling pedigree is really good. He had a great grappling match. If anyone wants to go and watch it, I think it was on Polaroids with Stevie Ray. Stevie Ray ended up beating him with might have been a heel hook, something like that. But they had a great match, and obviously we know Stevie Ray's grappling pedigree. But it was so good just to see the pop that Paddy Pimblett got. And I think he's the next star that's really took to the UFC. And I haven't seen anything like this since Conor. And it's just so weird. My dad, who's not a huge fan of UFC, he's been sending, or MMA, he's been sending me Paddy the Baddie videos all week. He's relentless. It's like a dog with a bone, man. I keep getting them, and when you're going to work, middle-aged mums are asking you about Paddy the Baddie at work. They're like, "Oh, so what do you think? What do you think of this guy, Paddy the Baddie? He's reaching a whole new audience." Is what I'm saying. It's not just the hardcore. If you were to go into most places now and ask if they've heard of Paddy the Baddie Pimblett, you'd see a lot of hands going up. But if you ask them, have you heard of Chuck Liddell? It might be a different answer. Or have you heard of? I was going to say Jose Aldo, but most folk have heard of him since McGregor. But you know what I'm saying. Have you heard of Davidson Figueiredo, one of the champions? Have you heard of Yuri Prochaska? Do you know what? They haven't heard of these champions, but they've heard of Paddy the Baddie, and that was evident. And I think the UFC got it right with his ring walk. I know a lot of people don't like it because it resembles a lot of WWE boxing bollocks, but with him, just enjoy the show, right? But the way the lights went off, the way the fans started chanting, "Oh, Paddy the Bar," it's going to be stuck in my head again. I've been doing that, singing that for years. But I was just so glad, like the way he set up, like the transition to get to like with that big knee like the big knee was perfect, and then the way he trapped the hand on the ground, like he trapped, I think it was his right arm that he trapped, so he couldn't defend the submissions. Like he comes across as goofy. He looks like Jay for the in-betweeners, stroke Chris Griffin. And that's the amazing thing as well. It's how that guy manages to go for looking like he did at the weigh-ins to looking like Chris Griffin. Because I seen him at Cage Warriors in Manchester, and I'm not joking you, he was fat as fuck, but he was a beefy boy, and he looks amazing. So I like that. Like, do what you want outside the camp. But when he gets in there, he's really providing the goods. He's caught to the fans. I think the next fight might be Topuria.
Topuria, and the UFC will not let Ilya within a fucking mile of Paddy Pimblett, as much as I hate to say it. I think it's an awful stylistic matchup for Paddy. Ilya's very short for 155. He's got a very low base. He's got a fairly good takedown defense, and he's got absolute lightning in his hands. And obviously with Paddy being, he's not chinny, but he likes to keep his chin up there sometimes. I don't think it's a fight that the UFC want to make anytime soon. And as well as that, I think they're also trying to build Ilya up a little bit as well, because I think he has so much potential. Maybe not as a top 10 or top 5 lightweight, but as an interesting and fun to watch lightweight. I think they will eventually make the matchup, but I think either Jim Miller or Bobby Green next for Paddy would go a long way. Giving him one of the kind of older on their way down veterans, I think, and especially with both of them. Jim Miller's slick with it on the ground, and Bobby Green's got that hood style of fighting. So that either one of them would be my next pick, preferably Jim and then Bobby, and then if he gets through both of them, then let him have a go at Ilya.
I just got two more things. First with Martin, I think the walkout is what echoes how big this guy is, and personality wise and aura. Some people are against it, but I'm all for it. When those lights go dark and it's a UFC event, I mean, there's nothing like it. I've been there live before. I've seen it. But, it's just like, and I am a big McGregor fanboy. Let me go ahead and get that out of the way. But I don't think there's any denying that when Connor's walkouts or anyone like that, when those lights go dim and, you just hear the music, you see all the phone cameras and everything, it's just so exhilarating. It's so energizing. So I love it. And, Paddy is a star. He already is a star. And then the second thing, I want the Topuria matchup. And, maybe you're probably right, Jamie. UFC doesn't want to go that route yet because they want to build both of these guys. They want to see what they can milk out of them before one of them loses in a big matchup. But, yeah, the Bobby Green fight, Jim Miller, I'm down for both of those as well.
I think it's that way as well. I think the UFC are very clued up that they know that they need to up Paddy's opponent. Like, I think the guys that he's fought have been really good. I'm not taking anything away from the guys that he's fought, but I think the UFC know that they need to give him that step up in competition if they want the people to remain interested. And maybe if they're having them fight, and I'm interested to like I said with Molly McCann, I'm very interested to see how a Paddy the Baddy show looks outside of the UK. Like, I think I'm sad to say it, but I don't think we'll see him fighting in the UK anymore for a long time. I think he's just going to be pay-per-view now because he's a star. Like, I think we'll lose that, which is sad, but it's interesting to see how it replicates across there. What the way Connor's fights replicated over there.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I I disagree with you that I don't think we'll see him in the UK anytime soon. I'd be shocked if they don't, have him and Molly both on basically any further UK card. But I'd say they'll probably, at least next year. I think if they do one or two London cards, they'll have Paddy and Molly on one of them or both of them, and then one pay-per-view. I'd my prediction for Molly is probably Antonina in December, and for Paddy, probably Jim Miller if Jim doesn't get another fight booked before then. But yeah, just as we're wrapping up the Paddy and Jordan Levitt section, I feel like I should probably take a minute and just highlight Paddy's post-fight speech and the interview that he did with Brett Okamoto immediately afterwards. Speaking about men's mental health, especially, and trying to break down this stigma. He told Brett Okamoto that he wants to use his platform to, really try and break this stigma down that, men have to be tough and can't talk about what they're going through. As he said, he'd rather made crying a shoulder than be crying at his funeral the next week. And yeah, I fully support Paddy and everything that he's doing as far as that regard. And I think that if there's one piece of media that you consume this week, it has to be Paddy's post-fight interview. And as well as that, a lot of people, call Paddy all sorts of crap online, but you look at what he's done for little baby Lee and what he's doing now for men's mental health. I think anybody with half a fucking brain can see that Paddy's a really nice guy, and he's just a bloke that's slick with it on the ground and has this attitude, and he's trying to do something with it. So all power to Paddy, and fuck you lizards at Twitter for banning him. Unban him. He didn't do anything wrong. But yeah, pretty disappointing co-main event in my opinion. I actually took a bathroom break during the second round, which from what I heard was the more interesting of the 3 rounds. But I think it was I kind of thought it was a bit of a mismatch anyway, to be honest. I thought that if Chris Curtis was able to get kind of a hold on Hermansson, he might have been able to finish it. But Hermansson executed the game plan against Chris Curtis that he should have executed against Sean Strickland. A lot of good rangy kicks, a lot of fast switch kicks and stuff. Thought other than that, it was pretty good. He really stopped Chris Curtis executing any of Chris's game plan. But with it being the co-main event and the loss of Darren Till, I think it was a little bit of a disappointing co-main, and especially given what happened in the main event, it was kind of a dud. All power to Chris Curtis for taking the fight on such short notice. Given that it was supposed to be Darren, and then Paulo Costa stepped in, I can't help but feel a little bit of resentment towards the matchmakers for giving it to Chris Curtis. But it was still a great fight from what not a great fight, but it was a very high level striking fight from what I remember. So
in terms of Paulo Costa, there's more chance of me making flyweight in a couple of weeks' notice than there is him making middleweight. That man is beefy.
Fuck the weight. I mean, Hermansson walks at 205 anyway, so it's fine. It would have been sanctioned by the Paulo Costa Commission. Let's just put it that way.
But no, I agree with some of the stuff you're saying there, Jamie. I think that obviously losing Darren Till to the card was huge. And I think it'll be huge for Darren as well, because Darren just keeps getting setback after setback, and you do worry about him because he has such a promising career. He's had a couple of bad fights, but fuck it, that happens to everybody. That will happen when you're fighting the best guys in the world. It's like zig when you should have zagged, and that's what happened. But I do. It was a step too much for Chris Curtis, in my opinion. It reminded me a lot of Chris Dawkins when he first came up in the heavyweight rankings. I think he beat Alexander Olenek, and then he beat Shamil Abramangedov. That's butcher. Aye, yeah, he beat them two, and then they gave him fucking Derek Lewis. You're like, what are you doing? And then he gets murked off Derek Lewis, and they go, do you want to know who you can fight next? Curtis Blades. Like, you're like, seriously, like, fucking stop it, Dana White. Like, calm down. Like, you don't need to hate the guy just because he's a police officer. Like, I'm sure he's a nice guy deep down. But no, in terms of Chris Curtis, and he seemed to not take it too well. Like, he took to social media to say that Jack Hermanson ran away from him the whole fight, and he was pressing that, and he was aggrieved that he lost. And I think he outstruck him by like 200 strikes, or he threw so many more strikes than Chris Curtis, and he was piecing him up in the feet. And I found it quite ironic that when he got asked would Hermanson stand with him in the exchanges, he laughed that off at the press conference. Well, I don't think he's laughing now. Like, Jack Hermanson's one of the best middleweights in the world. Like, he'll know how he strike, and he was striking really good. I really liked when he was throwing up. He threw up the high kick very well as well, and he was setting a lot of things up with his hands. But yeah, like the second round, like Hermanson was really close to finishing him. In the second round, he was firing through some great charging elbows. It was quite in Hermanson's point of view, striking wise, it was quite flawless because it looked like a high level striking performance. I don't think it wasn't, but it looked like that. Like the way he had him following him about like a dog in the lead. It was very impressive. Like, Chris Curtis wasn't cutting off the angles. Jack Hermanson was. He was creating angles, and Chris Curtis just followed him about. I know he took the fight on like a week's notice or something like that, so you've got all that to play into as well. But Hermanson just looked levels ahead, and you could see the disparity between the people that fought. I think before this, Chris Curtis's highest ranked or highest level opponent was Rafael Rivero. So it was a big jump, but I think the UFC did kind of like skitter about trying to make this match. They must have knew Paulo Costa would not have made it.
Yeah, I mean, the post-fight stuff kind of stained it, and left a kind of bitter taste in people's mouths, I think. But Jack Hermanson looked solid, in my opinion. Like you said, Martin, Chris Curtis had a lot of talk about after the fight, or immediately after the fight, that Hermanson had been running from him and this and that. He's kind of cleared that up since then and has apologized for the outburst. And same with Hermanson. He apologized, said something slipped his tongue. Hopefully it wasn't something too bad, Hopefully it was just normal fight talk or, smack talk. But, credit to Jack Hermanson. He took the fight on short notice. I picked Chris Curtis personally just because of the fact that with the fight against Vieira, what was that, about a month and a half ago, he couldn't get Chris Curtis to the ground. And I thought, with that being said, I didn't think Jack would be able to get him to the ground. So that therefore Chris would, maybe have the advantage on the feet. But, Jack surprised me there, and he looked really good with Chris with the kicks, the hands looked good. So I'm anxious to see Jack. I hope they can get Jack versus Darren Till. I think that's a very good fight for both guys. If Jack was to win, he gets Darren Till on his resume, but Darren Till, he's been fighting killers ever since he got the title fight against Tyron Woodley. He's just fought straight killers each fight. And I think this is a little bit of a step down, versus Jack Hermanson, because I don't put Hermanson in the same tier that I would put Whitaker or even Masvidal or somebody like that, just as far as matchup wise. So I'd be interested in seeing that fight actually come to fruition.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's absolutely the next fight that they should make. Hermanson said he wants to fight on the Sweden card. Fucking, get Till up there if he's ready, and if he's not, then we get a little bit ropey. Derek Brunson is also looking for a fight, which I think is stylistically pretty interesting with Hermanson. But uh, for Chris Curtis, I think Brad Tavares next might be a bit of a banger. Might be good for opening the opening some prelims, or closing some prelims rather, on a big pay per view sometime down the road. And I've actually just been made aware that Ilya is teasing some fight news soon, so it looks like I'm getting my wish, and Paddy's being kept away from him for the time being. But with that, I guess we move on to the.
Well, just to say how it's so heartbreaking. I just now remember the Sweden card, and we all were just saying Gustafsson needs to retire. That's so heartbreaking, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to give him one last fight in Sweden, put him against Paul Craig, and I don't think there'll be too much. I think that fight will end in a tap, nap, or snap. But don't give him anybody that has lightning in their hands like Ozdemir or uh Krylov. Just keep him away from people with decent striking, please. Speaking of decent striking, the 15-second main event might have been the biggest adrenaline dump I've ever experienced. From where I was standing, a lot of people online that were watching it on the broadcast might have seen it differently, but from where I was standing, it looked like Aspinall was significantly faster in the two exchanges that actually happened. I felt like he was in and out a lot quicker than Curtis could react. Um, I haven't watched it back from the TV angle, so I'm not entirely sure, but in person, it looked like, and based off what some of what Curtis Blades, sorry, has been saying on Twitter, I don't really think he wants to get back in there with Aspinall. I think it was a hard fight for Aspinall, but I think that after having been in there with him, I don't think Curtis Blades wants anything to do with him. But also in saying that, I don't think you can really give Blades the credit for winning this fight. I think that giving him the winner of Ty and Cyril in September is a little, might be a little much. I guess you got to keep the division going, and if that's the fight to make, that's the fight to make. But I'd far rather see Curtis Blades against the winner of Pavlovich and Derek Lewis this weekend. I know he's fought Derek Lewis before, but it was a pretty nice knockout, and I think it would go a long way in cementing Curtis as a proper top contender if he was to fight Blades again, or if he was to fight Derek Lewis again, and trying to get that loss avenged, because then the only other person to beat him is Francis, and then that's an interesting storyline. So Austin, any big thoughts?
Yeah, I disagree with a couple things. I'm pretty high on Curtis Blades, because the first fight with Francis, I thought he was beating Francis. It was a doctor stoppage, and the same with the Derek Lewis fight. I thought Curtis, even on the feet, was getting the better of Derek. I think he was quicker than Derek, and I think he's a more well-rounded fighter than Derek. So I'm all for the winner of Cyril Gahn versus Tai Tuivasa, just because I'm so big on Curtis Blades. I think he's a top-level guy. I think he's a top 5, maybe top 3. It sucks that Stipe's on the hold-up with John Jones, because I think that'd be a great fight, John versus Stipe versus Blades. But either or, I don't completely disagree. If Derek Lewis was successful at the pay-per-view and they ran that back, I'd be fine with that as well. I thought Aspinall did look faster from a TV angle, but I thought Curtis Blades was getting the better of the exchanges. There was only a couple punches landed between the two of them, but it seemed like Blades clipped him the first exchange, and the second one he had just missed with a couple counter shots. But I think that's also why Aspinall looked faster. But again, we're pulling at straws here because this fight only lasted 15 seconds to even go around. If it had gone around, we'd have a better estimation of who was the more, uh, I don't know, the more well-rounded or better fighter for the fight or throughout the fight. But it's so disappointing. I was looking so forward to this main event and our pre-fight breakdown when we did our picks. I spoke on that. We all did about how great this matchup is for both guys, and I could only imagine being there live how much of a letdown it would be to see that happen. Don't cry, Jamie.
Yeah, I'm struggling not to be honest. It was tough. The sitting in a sweaty tube station immediately afterwards, surrounded by drunk people, and the reek of body odor on the subway was just like, it's just, Martin, say something, please. Don't make me relive it.
I was actually quite disappointed this never get fight of the night. I thought it was the best 15 seconds of fighting I've ever seen in my life. No, I'm obviously joking, and I probably shouldn't joke about it because it was very sad, and I agree with a lot of what Austin was saying as well. In my opinion, I think well round in terms of skill set, I think Curtis Blades is maybe the best heavyweight in the world. But I know Francis Ngannou's beat him twice, but Francis Ngannou beat him with raw power. I think skill set wise, Curtis Blades is a better fighter. Same with Derek Lewis. I think he's a better fighter than Derek Lewis, but Derek Lewis just caught him with big shots, and that's what happens when you've got guys that weigh 230 plus pounds wearing 4 ounce gloves. That kind of stuff can happen. That's why we love the big boys. But I agree, like this matchup was so interesting because it was like Tom Aspinall has ran through everyone that's been put in front of him. He ran through Volkov, who I'd never seen anyone do that to Volkov. So I was very intrigued to how he coped with Curtis Blades and Curtis Blades' skill set. And it was a very strategical matchup for the UFC's point of view as well, because they really wanted to go, right, is Tom Aspinall one of the best heavyweights in the world, which I think he is. He is definitely there or thereabouts, but I worry, see with knee injuries particular, I always worry how they'll come back for that. And I don't know if we know the full extent of his knee injury yet. Well, I hope it's not an MCL, or I hope it's not the worst one, because they were claiming it could be on the broadcast. Like after Mike Bisping spoke to a doctor, like just by the noise he was making, they thought it was going to be the worst one. And with knees as well, like knees and shoulders, like they're like the healing process on them is very poor, and it tends to happen again and again and again. And I've been racking my brain like the kind of possibilities of what it could have been, and I'm very curious if it was similar to what happened in Blachowicz' last fight against Rakic, where Rakic went in with a previously existing injury. Like if that's happened with Aspinall as well, but he's not new. Like something's kind of teared, because with the knees, you always think of the wrestling, and it'll be a very wrestling heavy camp training for Curtis Blades. So I wonder if just defending, like sprawling, defending takedowns, defending double legs, single legs, etc., if something's maybe went and training on his knee and they've not knew the full extent, or he's not felt it. Like, so a lot of the time it can be hanging by a bit of string, then something happens and it just pops. So I don't want to speculate, obviously, but I've just been wondering if that's been the issue as well. But I hope we see Tom Aspinall back soon, and I hope we see him getting a big fight. What that fight looks like, I don't know. I would like to see Curtis Blades get the winner of Gain and Tai Tuivasa, because I think that's two guys he can get the better of, and I'd be very interested to see the improvements in Gains, like if he wins in his defensive wrestling, because we've seen him get a lot of problems with Francis Ngannou in the last fight. So it'd be interesting to see how the evolution of him of Gain would go. It's just sad, like seeing it. I'm a big Curtis Blades fan, but I like Aspinall as well, so I was rooting for Blades, but you were devastated when you seen it. Like, this is a young guy with his whole career ahead of him, who is nothing but nice. He seems lovely. Like you would take him, you would go for a pint with Tom Aspinall, and you would enjoy it. You would probably end up in a boat somewhere in a mad cruise, but it'd be a great night. But yeah, I wish him a speedy recovery, and I hope it's a fight we can see again in the future, because there was a lot of questions that were getting asked in it that I wanted to know from both fighters.
Yeah, 100%. I think that if it isn't run back as soon as humanly possible, it's an absolute travesty. Um, to your point, Martin, as well about it being a pre-existing injury from camp. Like I have I think it's a ligament in my right knee as well from jujitsu. Like from when I was like, I think I did it when I was 10, and it still bothers me today at kickboxing. But it's only ever exasperated by very specific movements, and I can't help but think that this was, something similar. Listening to Rogan describe what an ACL feels like, that's not what it sounds like to me. It to me it sounds like an MCL. And as to your point, I hadn't heard that Bisping said that on the broadcast, but based on his reaction, my first thought was an MCL, especially where the impact was and how quickly it happened. The fact that he was actually grabbing his knee, it seemed like he was trying to support it, and I wish him and Darren Till both as speedy a recovery as possible. And yeah, I'm still a little bit salty that that's how it ended. Uh any last thoughts, lads?
I'll just say one thing to really fanboy about Curtis Blades. I feel like, his only 3 losses has been Derek Lewis and Francis Ngannou. And I think all 3 times it's just sheer power, besides the first one with Francis maybe. And, I just feel like the fighter that Curtis could be at like 170 would like replicate someone like Kamaru Usman, in my opinion. He's so well rounded. He's got a gas tank for a heavyweight. And when he first started, he was more wrestling oriented. Now he's starting to really let it go with his hands. His boxing's looking a lot better. So it's just that's about it. I just wanted to fanboy out a little bit, but
No, of course. I was doing a bit of fanboying with Mike Chandler this weekend as well, so I fully understand that. But yeah, that's been our post fight podcast for UFC London 2. This has been Overtime Heroics MMA. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the YouTube, and follow all of us individually. I'm Jamie Frodo MMA on Twitter and Dorm Room Dogfights on YouTube. Guys, do you want to read out your socials?
I believe Martin Hamilton MMA on Twitter. You might need
come
to
on,
try
man.
and
You
follow
got to
me.
know this stuff at least. Come on.
I know this is the one question I've kind of flagged on all night, but no, I believe that's it. So if you want to follow me on Twitter and get some poor takes, fire in.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I have a Facebook page, YouTube. I'm getting ready to start back up on. They're all Austin Mar MMA.
Awesome. Been a great time, guys, and I'll see you later this week for our 277 preview, hopefully. So yeah, I'll see you guys later.
Peace.
Bye, guys.